In a world where royal fashion moments can spark global conversations and set trends for generations, one evening at Windsor Castle would forever change how the world saw Princess Catherine. As cameras flashed and dignitaries held their breath, she descended the grand staircase wearing a piece of history that hadn't been seen in public for decades. The tiara that adorned her head carried with it the weight of centuries, the whispers of Queen's past and the promise of a future that would blend tradition with a modern touch that only Catherine could master. What happened that night wasn't just another royal appearance. It was a moment that would be dissected by fashion experts, analyzed by royal historians, and remembered by millions who witnessed something truly extraordinary. The choice of tiara, the timing of the event, and the message it sent to the world would reveal secrets about the royal family that had been carefully guarded for years. This is the story of that magical evening, the preparation that led to it, and the ripple effects that followed. It's a tale of tradition meeting modernity, of a young woman who understood the power of symbolism, and of a moment that reminded the world why the British monarchy continues to captivate hearts and minds across the globe. The morning sun cast long shadows across the ancient stones of Windsor Castle as Catherine, Princess of Wales, stood before an ornate mirror in her private chambers. The reflection staring back at her held a mixture of anticipation and quiet determination. Today was not just another royal engagement, it was an event that would mark a significant milestone in her journey as a future queen consort. 3 weeks earlier, Queen Elizabeth had summoned Catherine to a private audience in the castle's oak room. The elderly monarch, with her characteristic grace and directness, had presented Catherine with an opportunity that would both honor her growing role within the family and test her understanding of royal protocol. The annual Windsor Heritage Gala, celebrating the castle's 900 years of history, would feature Catherine as the evening's primary host. More importantly, she would be granted access to the royal vault to select a tiara that would complement the occasion's significance. The weight of this privilege was not lost on Catherine. In her years as a member of the royal family, she had worn several magnificent pieces from the collection, but the freedom to choose from the entire vault was a responsibility reserved for the most senior members of the family. It was a clear signal of the Queen's confidence in her judgment and a recognition of her evolving status within the monarchy. Angela Kelly, the Queen's personal dresser and trusted confidant, had accompanied Catherine to the vault 3 days before the gala. The underground chamber beneath Windsor Castle housed one of the world's most extraordinary collections of royal jewelry. Row upon row of illuminated cases displayed tiaras, necklaces, brooches, and other precious pieces that had adorned the heads of queens and princesses for generations. Catherine's trained eye, honed by years of public appearances and careful study of royal history, moved methodically through the collection. Each piece told a story, carried the memories of significant moments in British history, and held the potential to send a powerful message to those who would witness her choice. The Cambridge Lover's Knot tiara, which had become her signature piece, sat prominently in its case. Its familiar presence offered comfort, but Catherine knew that this evening called for something different. The Queen's own wedding tiara, Queen Mary's fringe tiara, caught the light beautifully, but it carried such specific associations with the Queen's own wedding day that wearing it might seem presumptuous. As they moved deeper into the vault, Angela shared stories about each piece. The history lessons were invaluable, providing context that would influence Catherine's eventual choice. There was the Grand Duchess Elena Vladimir tiara, purchased by Queen Mary in 1921, with its interchangeable pearls and emeralds. The lotus flower tiara, created for the Queen Mother, represented a more modern aesthetic while maintaining classical elegance. But it was the George IV state diadem that made Catherine pause. The magnificent piece, created in 1820 for King George IV's coronation, had been worn by Queen Elizabeth for her own coronation procession and appeared on British currency for decades. Its design incorporated roses, thistles, and shamrocks, representing England, Scotland, and Ireland respectively, making it a powerful symbol of unity within the United Kingdom. Angela noticed Catherine's lingering gaze and provided additional context about the diadem's significance. It had been worn by Queen Elizabeth at every state opening of Parliament since her coronation, making it one of the most publicly recognised pieces in the collection. The decision to wear it would connect Catherine directly to the constitutional role of the monarchy while acknowledging her future responsibilities as Queen Consort. The discussion that followed between Catherine and Angela was both practical and philosophical. They considered the message that each potential choice would send, the historical precedents for wearing certain pieces at specific types of events, and the visual impact each would create when paired with Catherine's planned ensemble for the evening. Catherine's dress had been commissioned months earlier from one of her favorite designers. The midnight blue silk creation featured intricate beadwork that would catch the light beautifully while maintaining the sophisticated elegance appropriate for such a formal occasion. The color choice had been deliberate, representing both the night sky and the deep traditions of the monarchy, while allowing any tiara she chose to serve as the focal point of her appearance. The gala itself had been planned for nearly a year. Representatives from Commonwealth nations, distinguished historians, cultural leaders, and members of the diplomatic corps would gather in the castle's St. George's Hall for an evening celebrating Windsor's role in British history. Catherine would deliver the keynote address, highlighting the castle's evolution from medieval fortress to modern royal residence, while drawing parallels to the monarchy's own adaptation to contemporary times. Her speech preparation had been intensive. Working with her private secretary and a team of historical consultants, Catherine had crafted remarks that would demonstrate her deep understanding of her role while showcasing her personal passion for British heritage. The text wove together stories from Windsor's past with observations about its continuing relevance in the 21st century. The decision to focus on Windsor's role as a bridge between past and future reflected Catherine's own position within the royal family. She represented a new generation of royals who understood the importance of tradition while embracing the necessity of evolution. Her approach to royal duties had consistently demonstrated this balance, earning respect from both traditionalists and those who advocated for modernization. 3 days before the gala, Catherine returned to the vault alone for a final consultation with her chosen tiara. The George IV state diadem seemed to call to her, its diamonds and pearls creating a constellation of light that would perfectly complement her planned ensemble. But more than its beauty, the diadem's historical significance aligned with her vision for the evening. Wearing the piece would create a visual link between Catherine and every queen who had worn it before her. It would acknowledge her respect for the institution's history, while suggesting her readiness to carry those traditions forward. The symbolism was powerful but not overwhelming, sophisticated but not presumptuous. The decision made, Catherine spent the following days working with her styling team to perfect every detail of her appearance. Hair trials ensured that her signature brunette locks would provide the perfect foundation for the diadem's weight and design. Makeup consultations focused on creating a look that would be timeless in photographs while appearing natural under the evening's lighting conditions. Security preparations for the gala required extensive coordination between multiple agencies. The guest list included several heads of state, making the event a significant diplomatic occasion as well as a cultural celebration. Catherine would need to balance her role as hostess with her responsibilities as a senior member of the royal family, ensuring that every interaction reinforced Britain's relationships with its international partners.
The evening's schedule had been meticulously planned.
Catherine would greet guests in the castle's grand reception room before leading them into St. George's Hall for dinner. Her speech would come between the main course and dessert, allowing her words to resonate as guests continued their conversations throughout the remainder of the evening. The timing also ensured that photographers would capture her remarks during the optimal lighting conditions for the next day's newspaper coverage. Protocol required Catherine to study detailed briefings about each significant guest. She memorized names, titles, recent achievements, and topics of conversation that might arise during her interactions. This preparation reflected her understanding that every conversation at such events carried diplomatic weight and could influence Britain's relationships with other nations. On the morning of the gala, Catherine woke early for a final review of her speech and a quiet breakfast with Prince William. Their conversation touched on the significance of the evening, not just for Catherine personally, but for the monarchy's future. William's support and encouragement provided the confidence boost Catherine needed as she prepared for one of her most important solo appearances. The afternoon hours passed quickly as Catherine's team assembled for the final preparation phase. Her dresser arrived with the midnight blue gown, freshly pressed and ready for its moment in history. The tiara would remain in the vault until the last possible moment, transported to Catherine's chambers under careful security escort when the time came for her to complete her transformation from Duchess to the radiant princess the world would remember. The late afternoon sun filtered through the tall windows of Catherine's Windsor chambers as her transformation began. The atmosphere in the room was charged with anticipation, each member of her styling team understanding the historical significance of the evening ahead. This was not merely preparation for another royal engagement. It was the careful crafting of a moment that would be remembered and analysed for years to come. Catherine's hairstylist, Amanda Cook Tucker, had worked with the princess for over a decade, understanding instinctively how to create styles that would complement both her natural beauty and the formal requirements of royal protocol. The George IV state diadem demanded a hairstyle that would provide secure placement while showcasing the tiara's magnificent design. Amanda had practiced the chosen style multiple times during the previous week, ensuring that every detail would be perfect when the moment arrived. The process began with Catherine's hair being carefully washed and conditioned using products specifically chosen to provide the right texture and hold. Each strand was then methodically dried and shaped, creating a foundation that would support the diadem's considerable weight throughout the long evening ahead. The style itself was a masterpiece of understated elegance, incorporating elements that honored traditional royal hairstyles while maintaining Catherine's contemporary sophistication. As Amanda worked, Catherine reviewed her speech one final time. The words had been rehearsed countless times, but she wanted to ensure that her delivery would feel natural and heartfelt rather than overly practiced. The speech represented her opportunity to articulate her vision for the monarchy's future while paying appropriate homage to its distinguished past. Every phrase had been carefully chosen to strike the right balance between reverence and innovation. Her makeup artist, Arabella Preston, approached the task with the precision of a Renaissance master. The evening's lighting conditions, the color palette of Catherine's gown, and the brilliance of the chosen tiara all influenced the cosmetic choices. The goal was to create a look that would appear timeless in photographs, while ensuring that Catherine's natural beauty remained the focus rather than the makeup itself. The foundation was applied with meticulous care, creating a flawless canvas that would withstand the evening's extensive photography and the demands of a multi-hour public appearance. Catherine's eyes were enhanced with subtle shadows and precise liner that would define their shape under the bright lights of the Great Hall. The lip color was chosen to complement the midnight blue of her gown, while maintaining the sophisticated elegance appropriate for such a formal occasion. At precisely 5 o'clock, a discreet knock announced the arrival of the security detail accompanying Catherine's chosen tiara. The George IV state diadem had been transported from the royal vault in a specially designed case, surrounded by protocols that reflected both its monetary value and its irreplaceable historical significance. The officer responsible for its transport wore white gloves and carried detailed documentation verifying the piece's condition and chain of custody. Catherine felt a familiar flutter of nervous excitement as the case was opened in her presence. Despite having seen the diadem multiple times during her selection process, its beauty still took her breath away. The diamonds caught the light from every angle, creating a constellation of brilliance that seemed to pulse with the energy of every queen who had worn it before. The pearls added a classic elegance that softened the diamond's intensity while maintaining the overall impact of the piece. Angela Kelly supervised the diadem's removal from its case, her experienced hands handling the precious artifact with the reverence it deserved. She had assisted with countless royal jewelry moments throughout her career, but she understood that this particular occasion carried special significance for Catherine's evolving role within the family. The choice to wear the state diadem was bold and confident, reflecting Catherine's growing comfort with her position and her willingness to embrace the responsibilities that came with it. Catherine's gown had been waiting in her dressing room, a creation that represented months of collaborative effort between the designer and Catherine's team. The midnight blue silk had been chosen for its rich depth of color and the way it would interact with the lighting in St. George's Hall. The beadwork incorporated traditional motifs that echoed the castle's architectural details while maintaining a contemporary sophistication that reflected Catherine's personal style. The process of helping Catherine into the gown required careful coordination. Every element had to be perfect, from the way the silk fell across her shoulders to the precise positioning of the beadwork that would catch the camera flashes. The dress had been fitted multiple times to ensure that it would allow Catherine complete freedom of movement while maintaining its elegant silhouette throughout the evening's activities. As the final adjustments were made to her gown, Catherine could hear the first guests arriving in the courtyard below. The sound of car doors closing and voices greeting the receiving staff created a backdrop of anticipation that reminded her of the evening's approaching responsibilities. Each arriving guest represented a different aspect of the Commonwealth's relationship with Britain, making the evening both a celebration and a diplomatic opportunity. The moment had come for the diadem's placement. Catherine positioned herself before the large mirror while Angela and Amanda worked together to secure the piece. The weight was substantial but not uncomfortable, distributed evenly across Catherine's head through careful positioning and the structural support of her hairstyle. As the final adjustments were made, Catherine caught her first glimpse of her complete transformation. The reflection that stared back at her was breathtaking. The George IV state diadem transformed her from the familiar Princess of Wales into a vision of royal majesty that connected her directly to centuries of British monarchs. The diamonds and pearls created a halo effect that enhanced her natural beauty while adding an unmistakable aura of authority and grace. The midnight blue gown provided the perfect foundation for the tiara's brilliance, creating a cohesive look that was both timeless and distinctly contemporary. Prince William arrived for a private moment before Catherine's public appearance. His reaction upon seeing his wife in her full regalia was a mixture of admiration and pride that needed no words. They had navigated the complexities of royal life together for over a decade, but this moment represented a new chapter in Catherine's personal journey toward her eventual role as queen consort. Their brief conversation touched on the practical aspects of the evening ahead. While acknowledging the emotional significance of Catherine's transformation, William understood better than anyone the weight of responsibility that came with wearing such historically significant pieces, and his encouragement provided the final boost of confidence Catherine needed as she prepared to make her entrance. The photography session that followed would create the images that would appear in newspapers and magazines around the world the next day. Each pose was carefully considered to showcase both the diadem's magnificence and Catherine's natural grace. The photographers, chosen for their experience with royal portraits, worked quickly and efficiently to capture the shots that would define the evening's visual legacy. As Catherine reviewed the preliminary images on the camera's display, she could see that the combination of careful preparation and natural beauty had created something truly special. The photographs captured not just her physical transformation, but also the confidence and poise that marked her evolution as a senior member of the royal family. The final preparations included last-minute adjustments to Catherine's jewelry and a final review of the evening's schedule with her private secretary. Every detail had been planned and rehearsed, but the nature of live events meant that flexibility and quick thinking would be essential as the evening unfolded. Catherine's experience with public appearances had taught her to be prepared for the unexpected, while maintaining the composure that royal protocol demanded. At 7:30, Catherine received word that the majority of guests had arrived and were assembled in the grand reception room. The moment she had prepared for had finally arrived. As she made her way through the castle's corridors toward her entrance, the weight of the George IV state diadem served as a constant reminder of the history she carried and the future she represented. The corridor leading to the grand reception room had been lined with castle staff, creating an informal receiving line that allowed Catherine to acknowledge the people who worked behind the scenes to make such events possible. Their smiles and quiet words of encouragement reminded her that she represented not just the royal family, but also the countless individuals who dedicated their careers to maintaining Britain's royal traditions. Standing at the entrance to the reception room, Catherine took a deep breath and prepared to step into the spotlight. The transformation was complete, and the evening that would be remembered as one of her finest moments was about to begin. The grand doors to the reception room opened with ceremonial precision, and Catherine stepped into a scene that could have been painted by one of the great masters. The assembled guests, representing the finest diplomatic and cultural minds from across the Commonwealth, turned as one toward the entrance. The collective intake of breath was audible as they beheld Catherine in her magnificent transformation, the George IV state diadem catching the light from the crystal chandeliers and creating an almost ethereal glow around her figure. The midnight blue gown flowed with liquid grace as Catherine moved into the room, each step measured and confident. Years of public appearances had taught her how to navigate formal events with natural elegance, but tonight felt different. The weight of the historic diadem on her head served as a constant reminder of the generations of queens who had worn it before her, and the responsibility that came with carrying forward their legacy. Sir Marcus Pemberton, the evening's master of ceremonies, and a distinguished historian in his own right, stepped forward to make the formal introduction. His voice carried across the hushed room as he announced Catherine's arrival, but the words seemed almost unnecessary. Her presence commanded attention without proclamation, the visual impact of her appearance speaking more eloquently than any formal announcement could achieve. The receiving line that followed allowed Catherine to greet each significant guest personally. The Australian High Commissioner, Dame Rebecca Harrison, was among the first to approach, her eyes reflecting genuine admiration as she complimented Catherine's choice of tiara. The brief conversation that ensued touched on the Commonwealth's shared heritage and the role of Windsor Castle in maintaining those historic connections across the modern world. Professor Jonathan Whitfield from Oxford University, one of Britain's foremost experts on royal history, could barely contain his excitement as he approached Catherine. The academic had spent decades studying the George IV state diadem and its significance in British coronation traditions. His scholarly enthusiasm was infectious as he shared brief insights about the diadem's creation and its symbolic importance, adding depth to Catherine's understanding of the piece she wore. The diplomatic corps represented nearly 40 nations, each representative eager to engage with Catherine in conversations that balanced social pleasantries with subtle political significance. The French ambassador, Madame Élise Dubois, spoke warmly about the cultural exchanges between Britain and France, while complementing Catherine's sophisticated style. The conversation, conducted partially in French, showcased Catherine's linguistic abilities and her understanding of the diplomatic nuances that made such events successful. Crown Prince Frederick of Denmark, accompanied by his wife, Crown Princess Mary, brought a unique perspective as fellow royals navigating the complexities of modern monarchy. Their conversation touched on the challenges of maintaining tradition while adapting to contemporary expectations, a topic that resonated deeply with Catherine's own experiences. The Danish royals' admiration for Catherine's approach to her role was evident in their warm exchanges and genuine interest in her perspectives. As the reception continued, Catherine found herself engaged in a particularly meaningful conversation with Dr. Amara Okafor, a young historian from Nigeria whose research focused on the Commonwealth's colonial history and its modern implications. The discussion was both challenging and enlightening, covering topics that required careful navigation while maintaining the diplomatic courtesy appropriate for the setting. Catherine's thoughtful responses demonstrated her awareness of complex historical issues and her commitment to fostering understanding across cultural divides. The transition from reception to dinner required Catherine to lead the procession into St. George's Hall, one of Windsor Castle's most magnificent spaces. The hall had been transformed for the evening, with long tables arranged to maximize conversation opportunities while maintaining the grandeur appropriate for such a significant gathering. The lighting had been carefully planned to complement Catherine's appearance, ensuring that the diadem's brilliance would be captured perfectly in the evening's photography. Catherine's place at the head table positioned her where she could observe the entire gathering while remaining accessible for conversation with key guests. The seating arrangement reflected months of diplomatic planning, ensuring that each placement would facilitate meaningful exchanges between representatives of different nations and cultural institutions. The dinner conversation flowed naturally between topics ranging from historical preservation to contemporary cultural exchanges. Catherine's role as hostess required her to guide discussions while ensuring that every guest felt included and valued. Her natural curiosity about different cultures and her genuine interest in the guests' work created an atmosphere of warmth that elevated the evening beyond mere protocol. Lord Chancellor Hamilton, seated to Catherine's right, provided fascinating insights into the legal traditions that connected Windsor Castle to Britain's constitutional history. Their discussion touched on the evolution of royal prerogatives and the modern monarchy's role in contemporary governance, topics that would inform Catherine's understanding of her future responsibilities as Queen Consort. The Canadian Prime Minister's cultural attaché, Miss Sarah Chen, engaged Catherine in a lively discussion about the role of royal patronage in supporting artistic endeavours across the Commonwealth. The conversation highlighted Catherine's own commitment to cultural preservation and her understanding of how royal attention could amplify important cultural initiatives. As the main course concluded, the moment arrived for Catherine's keynote address. The gentle chiming of crystal against silver brought conversations to a natural pause as guests turned their attention toward the head table. Catherine rose with fluid grace, the diadem catching the light as she moved, creating a momentary sparkle that seemed to announce the significance of her upcoming words. Her speech began with a reflection on Windsor Castle's role as both fortress and home, drawing parallels between the building's evolution and the monarchy's own adaptation to changing times. Catherine's delivery was confident and natural, the result of extensive preparation combined with genuine passion for her subject. She spoke of tradition not as a burden to be carried, but as a foundation upon which to build a meaningful future. The historical references woven throughout her remarks demonstrated Catherine's deep research and understanding of Windsor's significance. She mentioned specific monarchs who had called the castle home, highlighting their contributions while drawing connections to contemporary challenges and opportunities. The speech struck a perfect balance between reverence for the past and optimism for the future. Her words about the Commonwealth's shared heritage resonated particularly strongly with the international guests. Catherine spoke eloquently about the bonds that connected nations across continents, emphasizing cultural exchange and mutual respect rather than historical dominance. The diplomatic skill evident in her language choices reflected her growing sophistication in international relations. The conclusion of her speech received sustained applause that reflected not just politeness, but genuine appreciation for her words. Several guests were visibly moved by her combination of personal warmth and institutional gravitas. The standing ovation that followed seemed to acknowledge not just her remarks, but also her evolution as a senior royal who could articulate the monarchy's values with both authenticity and authority. As dessert was served and conversations resumed, Catherine found herself engaged in discussions that built upon themes from her speech. The evening's diplomatic success was evident in the animated exchanges taking place throughout the hall, with representatives from different nations finding common ground in their shared appreciation for cultural heritage and international cooperation. The photography sessions that followed dinner captured images that would define the evening's legacy. Catherine posed with various groups of guests, each photograph serving diplomatic purposes while creating lasting memories of the historic gathering. The professional photographers moved discreetly throughout the hall, capturing candid moments that revealed the genuine warmth of the interactions taking place. One particularly striking image captured Catherine in conversation with three young Commonwealth scholars, the diadem's brilliance contrasting beautifully with the earnest expressions of the emerging academics. The photograph would later be chosen for the cover of several international publications, symbolizing the monarchy's commitment to supporting education and cultural exchange. As the evening drew toward its conclusion, Catherine participated in the traditional toasts that honored both the gathering's purpose and the relationships between the represented nations. Her own toast, brief but heartfelt, emphasized the shared values that connected the Commonwealth while acknowledging the unique contributions each nation brought to the collective heritage they celebrated. The departing guests took time to express their appreciation personally to Catherine, many commenting specifically on her choice of the George IV state diadem and its symbolic significance for the evening. The positive responses affirmed her decision while highlighting the thoughtful consideration that had guided her selection process. Prince William joined Catherine for the final farewells, his presence adding warmth to the diplomatic courtesies while reinforcing the personal relationships that underpinned formal international connections. Their collaboration in hosting duties demonstrated the partnership that would define their future reign, combining Catherine's grace with William's institutional knowledge. As the last guests departed and the castle staff began the process of restoring the halls to their usual state, Catherine reflected on the evening's success. The George IV state diadem had fulfilled its symbolic purpose, connecting her visually and spiritually to the queens who had worn it before, while establishing her own place in the continuum of British royal history. The following morning's newspaper coverage would confirm the evening's impact, with photographs of Catherine in the magnificent diadem appearing on front pages around the world. Fashion experts would analyze every element of her appearance, while political commentators discussed the diplomatic significance of the gathering she had hosted with such grace. But for Catherine, the evening's greatest success lay not in the media coverage or diplomatic achievements, but in the personal growth she had experienced. Wearing the George IV state diadem had been more than a fashion choice. It had been a statement of readiness for the responsibilities that lay ahead, and a demonstration of her understanding of the monarchy's enduring role in British and Commonwealth life.